Stephen smiled, looking a little embarrassed. Yash could tell at a glance that Stephen had a favor to ask of him. What is it, Stephen? There's no need to be polite between us. I will be straightforward then. I spoke on the phone with Mr. Rogers just now. He told me to ask you if you could invite Kieran to attend the Rogers family's grand celebration, Stephen said. Surely, it was Glenn's idea. As for inviting the god of war, the Rogers family wasn't qualified, and thus Glenn dared not even think about it. But he wanted to give Kieran a try. Kieran was one of the 5 great kings of war under the command of the god of war. It would be the Rogers family's greatest honor if he accepted the invitation. It was for an assignment that I came into contact with the god of war, Azure Dragon, and the others. There's no substantial relationship or whatsoever, Stephen added. But you and Kieran are different. He's equivalent to your master. Yash's expression changed slightly. Since Mr. Rogers said so, I'll give it a try. Shortly after, Yash came to report at Kieran's command post. Are they gone? Kieran asked without looking up, his legs on the table. Yes, sir. But Yash stood rooted to the spot after finishing his report. What is it? Kieran looked at him in puzzlement. Don't just stand there. Say it. Reporting, sir. Yash straightened his back. My instructor, Mr. Glenn Rogers, wishes to invite you to the Rogers family 40th anniversary celebration. Oswald Rogers, that Rogers family? Kieran asked. He had heard it from Azure Dragon before that the Rogers family was the enemy of the god of war. Yes, sir. Yash nodded. Although it seemed like a slim chance, at least he tried. Okay, I'll go. Kieran accepted the invitation. This is great. Thank you, sir. Yash saluted. Immediately, the Rogers family learned that Kieran would be attending their grand celebration. Glenn was all smiles. Haha, God bless the Rogers family. That would be the greatest honor for us if Kieran shows up. Ha ha ha. He's the god of war's right-hand man. It's equivalent to us having a little something going on with the god of war. Our status will definitely rise after this celebration. Yeah, Dad, Anthony agreed. Although we're one of the top 10 wealthiest families in Northampton, we are still at the bottom of the list after all. We can definitely move up a few places after this celebration. The Rogers family were so excited that they clenched their fists. The celebration was good news to them as well. In layman's terms, it was very likely that their dividends would increase from 50 million to 100 million. Pass on my orders, said Glenn, looking at everyone. Ramp up the publicity. And spread the news that the King of War, Kieran, will be our guest of honor for this celebration. The attendance list of the Rogers family's grand celebration spread like wildfire in Northampton, and seeing that the most honored guest was none other than Kieran, the god of war's right-hand man, many powerful families in Northampton were envious. So what if they were rich? And so what if they had connections all over Arudia? None of those was equal to Kieran's attendance at the celebration. Dad, Pamela's daughter, Abigail, wants her brother-in-law and sister to attend as well. As you know. Those are Levi and Zoe, and so I said yes, said Anthony to Glenn. Glenn patted Anthony's shoulders. You did the right thing. We will show Levi just how great the Rogers family is. Glenn chortled. In fact, we should thank Levi for this, Anthony added. We only possess part of the core technology developed by his team, but we have made a net profit of at least 20 billion in the past 6 years. Haven't we? Yeah, that kid sure was capable. Even the richest man in Northampton remembers him. Glenn withdrew his smile and continued coldly. But I can't stand him beating my grandson to a pulp like this. I must hit him after the celebration. Right, the overseas experts and doctors are arriving soon, aren't they? Glenn asked as a thought occurred to him. Make sure Oswald attends the celebration. The Rogers family had hired 10 foreign experts to treat Oswald to make sure that he could attend the celebration. Dad, answered Anthony, they will arrive today at 12 midnight. 5 days will be enough. Okay, bring them here and make sure nothing goes wrong, Glenn said. Don't worry, Dad. I will pick them up myself. At this moment, Levi was at the manor where Azure Dragon and the others lived. Kieran had just informed Levi about the invitation he received from the Rogers family. You did great. I am going too as an ordinary guest. But you are the guest of honor, kiddo. Levi teased. Our little Kieran will be the most important guest at the grand celebration, Azure Dragon joined in. Stop teasing me, please. Kieran said immediately. Right then, the valiant and heroic Phoenix came forward, saying respectfully, reporting, Sir. I just received news that the Rogers family has hired 10 foreign experts to treat Oswald Rogers. They will be landing at the private zone of Northampton Airport at 12 tonight. They are here to treat Oswald? Levi's expression darkened. Yes, sir. The Rogers family wants to make sure that Oswald attends the grand celebration, so they invited top medical experts from all over the world, Phoenix said. Levi raised his arm to look at the time. It was 10:15. Let's go and take them down, said Levi, rising to his feet. The nerve to treat Oswald. Northampton Airport had always been busy. But tonight, there were black cars stopping before the private passageway, headed by a Rolls-Royce. With dozens of hefty men in suits standing next to it, all of them looking aggressive. Coming down from the Rolls-Royce was Anthony. They were here to pick up the foreign medical experts. Such a grand scene was only in line with the Rogers family's reputation as it brought about an uproar among the crowd. Anthony glanced at his watch. It was exactly 12. Okay, the experts are coming out soon. We will leave immediately once we pick them up. Anthony instructed, his men standing by sternly. Shortly after, a team of 20 came out from the private passageway. This included the foreign experts and their assistants, as well as a good deal of equipment. Welcome, Mr. Jeffrey and team. Anthony greeted. This way, please. With a wave of his arm, Anthony's men took over the medical team's equipment and loaded them into the car, and the medical team was ushered into their respective rides. Chuff. 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 However, at this moment, there was a rumbling sound in the sky. It was the sound of a propeller spinning at high speed. Thump. 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 Rays of bright light shone on the car and the people's faces from mid-air, lighting the place up like daylight. In the face of such strong light, everyone was so shaken that they couldn't open their eyes. The sound in their ears was getting louder like thunder. The fierce wind the propeller produced was raging, and everyone was almost blown away. Only then did everyone see clearly that those were helicopters in the air. After taking a closer look at the symbol, everyone's heart sank. Those were helicopters from the war zone. Everyone, listen and stay wherever you are. A loud voice was heard from the loudspeaker. Thereafter, they saw men after men in suits of different skin colors, and height about a head taller than the Rogers family's guards, sliding down the helicopter's ladders. The hefty men in suits who landed and seized the foreign medical team directly from the Rogers family were none other than the mercenaries under James' leadership. Along with the medical equipment that had been loaded in the car, everyone and everything was loaded into the helicopters instead. Anthony and the rest could only look on as the mercenaries took away the medical team and equipment from them. Firstly, the Rogers family had no ability to fight against these mercenaries. Secondly, Anthony was afraid of these symbols on the helicopters. Chuff. 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 It was not only until the helicopters had left that Anthony came back to his senses. What just happened? These mercenaries are well trained, and it took them only 1 minute to raid the place. It was so fast that we couldn't even react in time. What do we do now, Mr. Rogers? The head of the bodyguards asked. Go home. What else can we do? Anthony made a sour face. Returning to the Rogers residence, Glenn was shocked when he learned about the episode at the airport. You didn't stop them? Glenn asked. They are just a bunch of foreign bodyguards. But Anthony shook his head. Dad, listen to me. That group of people was well trained. You can tell from the way they glide down the helicopters that they must have served in the military. I suspect they are mercenaries. Glenn looked dazed. Mercenaries? But I don't know anyone who dares to deploy mercenaries in Northampton. There is one. Didn't Rick Garrison hire some mercenaries a while ago? They were detained after the incident and have yet to be released. I think it's them, Anthony said. So you mean to say that it's Rick who is using this group of mercenaries? Glenn already had an answer in his mind. Anthony nodded. Most probably so. Those symbols on the helicopters are military symbols. Who would dare to use these helicopters? Glenn was puzzled. Is there anything wrong with these doctors? Why were they detained? We don't know and didn't dare to ask. On the other side, Levi had directly sent these doctors out of Arudia. You want to treat Oswald? No way. For the next few days, the Rogers family had been asking around to find out the reasons, but to no avail. They found nothing solid about these mercenaries. Could they be coming for Oswald, suggested Leo, Oswald's uncle. Glenn and Anthony glared at him. What nonsense are you spouting? How could such a great person hold grudges against Oswald? The only use of these experts is to treat Oswald. Isn't it obvious that they were detained because the other party didn't want them to treat him? Leo analyzed. It's only Levi who doesn't want Oswald to be treated in the whole of Northampton, Glenn retorted. Are you suggesting that Levi is the god of war? Of course not. How could Levi be the god of war? That's too ridiculous. Leo shook his head. Oswald is not getting any better. I don't think he can make it to the celebration, Glenn sighed. Anthony knew the importance of the celebration this time. It was basically a guarantee that Oswald would become the heir if he attended the celebration. Dad, can we postpone the celebration? Asked Anthony, hoping fervently for his son to attend it. His words had Glenn's anger spiked. How can we postpone such a big event? What do you think my students will think about us? What if we anger Kieran? No, we can't postpone the celebration. Rogers Group's 40th anniversary celebration was just around the corner, and almost the whole of Northampton was aware of it. Everyone was proud to have the invitation to the grand celebration. Many people had even sent pictures of the invitation to their friends to show off their status of being acquainted with the Rogers. One could see how well the Rogers family's publicity had been done. The night before the celebration, Abigail specially came to deliver Levi and Zoe their invitations. Because of what happened to Oswald, Zoe had been worried to this day. She dared not attend the Rogers family's celebration, lest they flew into a rage at the sight of them. If you won't go, I will go. Naturally, Levi wanted to go and Abigail was very happy about that because he would be hers alone if Zoe refused to go. You must watch over Levi, Zoe urged. He has beef with the Rogers family. Don't worry, Zoe. Grandpa loves me very much. No one can touch him, Abigail said. Aaron and Caitlin didn't receive the invitation. In Pamela's opinion, they had no rights to attend the celebration. The next day, the City Convention and Exhibition Center became the venue for this grand celebration. The street in front of the City Convention and Exhibition Center was taken over by the Rogers family for the day, and a variety of banners and flying balloons were hung on both sides of the dozen-kilometer-long road. The Rogers family had spent a tremendous amount of money to decorate the venue. They sure were willing to spend that money. After all, even the invitation cards were gilded with gold. Not to mention the dozens of A-list celebrities and countless influencers who were invited. The parking lot in front of the venue was filled with rows of luxury cars. The Rogers family's network of connections was not to be frowned upon. Everyone who attended the celebration was wealthy and respectable. The Lopez family was simply out of their league. Abigail and Levi arrived at the venue and made their way in easily after showing their invitations. As the celebration hadn't officially started yet, everyone was waiting at the lounge where a buffet was being served. Levi and Abigail looked for a seat and had just sat down when a voice was heard from behind. "Levi, is that you?" Levi looked back to see a graceful woman in a long burgundy dress. She had a voluptuous figure, slender legs, and a charming and seductive temperament. The woman was looking at Levi with her doe-like eyes. Levi recognized the woman as May Holland, his and Morris' business partner in the early days, who had both the capability and the creativity to succeed. Their startup team was riding high at first, but many had opted out when they started to lose money, leaving only Levi, Morris, and another girl. Among those who opted out was May. "It really is Levi." Another voice was heard from the side. Standing before Levi right now were 4 other people. They were Yo-Yo Peterson, Leon Watson, Hanson Wood, and Bryce Chad, his startup partners from the past. Yo-Yo was that only girl who stayed on while the others had opted out. When Levi's startup business became successful later on, they had wanted to rejoin, but he rejected them. Levi could still remember how Leon and the other 2 guys had come to laugh at him on the day of his imprisonment. The ridicule of his classmates and his partner's betrayal that day had left a deep scar in Levi's memory. Etched deep in his heart were the faces of Leon and the others. These people were unforgettable. Furthermore, Yo-Yo had refused to back out after their business venture had failed that year. Nonetheless, she had later gone on to take care of her family's business. After that, Levi had cut all ties with them, so he was unaware of their current statuses. However, after leaving the team that year, some of them had gone on to start their own businesses and had become quite successful. Yo-Yo and May had done the best. Both of them ran companies with market values of $1 billion. Leon's group did quite well too. The 3 of them were each worth several $100 million. After all, at that time, only high achievers could be partners with Levi. Even so, compared to Levi, they were subpar. No matter how hard they tried, there was an insurmountable gap between them and the Levi from 6 years ago. Later, when they heard that Levi was in prison, Leon and his friends were so happy that they went to gloat over his predicament. Levi greeted them. "Yo-Yo, May, you came too?" Before the girls could reply, Hanson and Bryce said, "Why can't we come?" Yo-Yo and May are the young elites of Northampton Enterprises, and they're worth more than $1 billion each. Our net worth may not be as impressive, but we're still worth several $100 million. We were officially invited by the Rogers family. Leon sneered, "That's right. We are definitely qualified to come. Conversely, your eligibility is questionable. You have just been released from prison, and you don't run any company. You are penniless. How did you get in?" The three ganged up to deride Levi. Glimpsing the invitation card in Levi's hands, Bryce snatched it from him. "Miss Zoe? Ha ha ha. Now, I know. You got in using your wife's invitation card?" Bryce laughed at his expense. They were simply stating facts. The name written on the card was Zoe's. Leon chuckled humorlessly. "It turns out that you depend on your wife. I heard that Zoe recently received a promising contract, which allows her to barely qualify for this event." Hanson mocked. "Northampton's best, Mr. Levi Garrison, is now depending on a woman?" Despite their relentless insults, Levi did not show any reaction. In his eyes, these clowns were totally worthless. They were nobodies compared to the Garrison family, let alone today's giant, the Rogers family. Nevertheless, to Yo-Yo and May, Levi was but a shadow of what he had been. In their opinion, the leader who used to be invincible and was always in control had turned out to be a pathetic bum after 6 years in prison. Not only was he depending on a woman for support, he had not challenged nor retorted his tormentor's verbal abuse. How full of life and motivation was Levi in his glory days when he founded his business. At that time, Yo-Yo had been deeply in love with Levi. Nothing could make her leave him, not even his failure in his undertakings. She had wanted to stay with him for always. Those days, Levi's every word and every move had won May's heart. May was daring and proactive. Many times, she had pursued and even tried to seduce him. Nevertheless, she had been rejected by Levi each time. That was the real reason she left when the business failed. No matter how times had changed, this was the man they had loved so deeply. The two were deeply moved after seeing Levi's current state. However, what they felt was immense luck and joy. After being rejected, May had left in order to improve herself. Her goal was to succeed so that Levi would regret his decision. Yo-Yo's feelings were not so different. If Levi had been successful and lived happily ever after with Zoe, she would be heartbroken. However, what she felt now was unbridled joy. The bottom line was that the less successful Levi was, the more joy and satisfaction they would feel. As long as Levi failed and deteriorated, that would prove that their decision to leave him was right. It proved that Levi was unworthy of them. They looked at each other, and their thoughts were more or less the same. They were different from Leon and his two friends in that they felt emotional, but they would not ridicule or taunt Levi. "Enough, you guys, shut up. Do not forget that we were partners before. Even though Levi rejected our joint venture back then, he helped us a lot," May spoke up for Levi. She was full of authority, speaking like a queen. With one sentence, she stopped the trio's taunts. Yo-Yo was different from May in that she gave support quietly. "Are you doing all right?" She had a lot that she wanted to say to him but could only force out 4 simple words. "Yeah, I am all right," Levi replied. Yo-Yo looked at Levi, and a myriad of emotions surged through her heart. Where is the man who was in control of everything? So it turns out that time can really change everything. It can prove that my opinion at that time was not wrong. Time proved that my parents were right when they said that Levi's surge of energy will die off and that he is not worthy of me. It's true, then. Everything is now proven to be true. Hanson looked at Levi and laughed. "Levi, I would like to ask you, how do you feel now, looking at Yo-Yo and May who are each worth $1 billion? I am certain you regret rejecting them, don't you?" Hanson chortled. Bryce said, "Aside from the fact that Yo-Yo and May are doing much better than Zoe, Zoe's company nearly went bankrupt not long ago." Leon laughed and said, "You regret it, don't you? If Yo-Yo or May helps you now, you will definitely make a comeback. However, you don't even have this opportunity. You are not worthy of them. Hearing all this, neither Yo-Yo nor May said a word. May stood with her arms folded, like a goddess on a pedestal. If Levi were to confess to her now, she would ruthlessly reject him. She would even reply, "There was a time when you couldn't be bothered with me. I am not the same now. Levi, you are not worthy of me." Yo-Yo, too, felt the same, more or less. If she had another chance, she would not love Levi again. Seeing this scene, Abigail came over and held Levi's arm. She sneered, "You are, after all, just ordinary, short-sighted folk. My brother-in-law is still amazing. In his eyes, you are nothing but tiny little ants. That's why he does not bother to reply to your insults." Abigail might not know everything about Levi, but she did have an inkling of his true ability. Someone who offhandedly named her as the owner of a 50 million home and just as casually bought the revolving restaurant in Northampton Center was not someone to be derided by the likes of May and her buddies. "Ha ha ha. Levi, is this your sister-in-law? What a lovely girl." May smiled and looked at Levi contemptuously. It was so difficult to start a business now, more than 100 times harder than 6 years ago. If Levi were to try to reach her level now, it would take him a whole lifetime to catch up. May laughed, saying, "Old friend, I heard that you are not working yet. If you would like to, come and work for me as a head technician. I will give you a handsome salary." She imagined the man who once rejected her at his pinnacle of success working under her. Just the thought filled her with pleasure. Levi rejected her offer, saying, "It's not necessary. After today, the Levi Group and the Garrison family's companies will be under me again along with the Rogers family's businesses. I will have a job then." After hearing Levi's claims, the whole group was stunned into silence.